Hi there. Tonight, we begin a journey unlike anything you've ever heard. Picture this, a dinner table set just a little too perfectly. The smell of slightly burnt lasagna drifting in from a kitchen where no one really wants to be. And me smiling sweetly while hiding something no one at that table would ever suspect. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately known you were being judged? Every glance, a silent calculation, every word dipped in polite poison. You might not survive what I've been through, but I did. And what came next? Well, let's just say some people learned the hard way that not everything is as it seems. So before you get too cozy, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, comment below with your city and your local time. I want to see just how far this story travels. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some soft background noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. The invitation came on a chilly Tuesday morning, just as I was watering my succulents, one of the few things in my apartment that didn't judge me. "Hey Mom," Lucas said, his voice tight. "Brittany's making her famous lasagna Friday night. You want to come?" Famous lasagna. The same dish that once sent 3 people home with indigestion and 1 poor neighbor to urgent care. Sure, why not? "Sounds lovely, sweetheart," I replied. He hesitated. "And maybe dress a little nicer this time. You know how Brittany is about presentation. Presentation. As if I were an entree, not a guest." After we hung up, I stood in front of the mirror, gray bun cardigan, with more pills than a pharmacy, no makeup. Perfect. That was the point. For 3 years, I'd been playing the role of grieving widow on a budget. The kind of woman who asks for leftovers and shops during senior discount hours. But what they didn't know, I was worth $5 million. And that dinner was going to mark the beginning of the end for someone. Friday arrived wrapped in a biting October breeze, the kind that slips under your coat and whispers, "Don't forget who you are." I walked the 6 blocks to their house. Yes, walked. Brittany loved telling people I didn't have a car. I let her. Let people underestimate you. It makes the payoff much more satisfying. Lucas answered the door. "Hey, Mom, come in." The hug was brief, stiff, like a pat-down. I caught the flicker of relief when he pulled away. Then came Brittany, standing at the edge of the dining room like she was posing for a home decor magazine cover. Her platinum hair curled to perfection, dress tight enough to violate 2 traffic laws, and a face that said, "I am trying very hard to pretend I don't hate you." "Hi, Marilyn," she said, scanning me like I was a suspicious package. "So glad you could make it." Of course I smiled. "Wouldn't miss your famous lasagna." The table was set 2 pristine settings across from each other, and then mine. A chipped plate, mismatched silverware, and a wine glass that looked like it had survived a frat party. Lucas gestured to the farthest chair. "Sit here, Mom." I did, silently. Brittany served the lasagna like she was unveiling a Van Gogh. "It's my grandmother's recipe," she announced, passed down through generations. I took a bite. Crunchy on the edges, cold in the center. Her grandmother must have been a war criminal. I said, rustic. The first 20 minutes were a masterclass in passive aggression. Lucas talked about work, but skipped the part where he'd been passed over for a promotion again. Brittany filled the silence with yoga class drama and a monologue on how their couch was depressing her aura. "We're thinking of getting new furniture," she said, slicing her lasagna into perfect squares. "Something with energy." "I remember helping you pick that couch," I said. "Well," she replied, smiling tightly, "tastes evolve." "So do priorities," I murmured. That didn't go unnoticed. Finally, the real reason for dinner arrived. "Actually, Mom," Lucas started eye-shifting like he was about to ask me for a kidney. "We wanted to talk to you about something." I set my fork down. "I'm listening." Brittany leaned in, voice laced with faux concern. "We've been worried about you. It's been 3 years since Richard passed, and, well, it just seems like you're stuck." "I manage fine." "Do you?"
she asked sweetly. "You're living in that tiny apartment, no car shopping at thrift stores." "Exactly as planned. We can't keep supporting you forever," she continued. "Lucas works hard. We're thinking about starting a family and—" She trailed off, but the message was clear: make room or get out of the way. I don't recall asking for support. "Oh, Marilyn," she said with mock sympathy, "there's no shame in needing help, but maybe it's time you contributed." "A job?" I asked, blinking. "Lots of people your age work," she chirped. "Walmart is always hiring greeters." It took everything in me not to laugh. Me, a Walmart greeter. After running a business empire with Richard. After negotiating international real estate deals. After retiring with more zeros than their combined IQ. I stared at her. I really looked. And then I smiled. "You know, Brittany," I said softly, "you might want to start brushing up your own resume." The silence that followed Chef's kiss. Lucas looked up puzzled. Brittany froze fork halfway to her mouth. I stood slowly. "Thank you for dinner. The lasagna was exactly what I expected." And I left, calm, steady, and not looking back. Behind me, I heard Brittany whisper to Lucas, "Did she just threaten me?" "Oh no, sweetheart, that wasn't a threat. That was a warning." There's a particular kind of silence that follows a dinner like that. The kind that stretches between walls and days, echoing louder with each passing hour. Saturday was quiet. Sunday too. No calls, no texts, not even a passive-aggressive emoji. Brittany was probably busy reviewing security camera footage, trying to decode every syllable I'd said like it was some kind of elderly Morse code. Meanwhile, I was drinking tea, listening to jazz, and writing out my grocery list because revenge doesn't cancel out the need for oat milk. Monday morning, Lucas called. "Mom," he said cautiously, "can I come over?" That was new. In 3 years, my son had never once stepped foot in my apartment. That tiny little box I struggled to afford, filled with furniture that looked like it had survived 3 yard sales and a hurricane. "Of course," I said. "I'll put on coffee." It was his favorite blend, actually. Imported. Aged in whiskey barrels. I kept it hidden behind a box of instant decaf, my version of a false wall. When he arrived, Lucas hesitated at the door like it might bite him. His eyes scanned the place, visibly absorbing the faux struggle, the worn recliner, the water-stained ceiling, the stack of crossword puzzles I never actually finished. "This place is," he started. "Small," I offered. I was going to say depressing. "Charming." He sat at the kitchen table while I poured him a cup of the fancy coffee in a chipped mug. A little touch of theater never hurt. He took one sip and paused. "This is really good." I smiled. Even people on fixed incomes deserve flavor. He didn't laugh. "About Friday night," he began. I waited. "Brittany's upset." "Of course she is." "The woman throws a tantrum when the barista spells her name with an I. She thinks you threatened her." "I didn't," I said evenly. "I promised her." "Promised what?" I sipped my own coffee. That there are consequences to cruelty. Lucas leaned back, studying me. "You've changed. You've been different lately." "I've been patient. That's not the same thing." He looked lost. Like someone who'd suddenly realized the GPS was taking them somewhere they didn't recognize. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't get it. You've always been so quiet. Being quiet isn't the same as being weak." He stared into his mug. I walked to the bookshelf and reached behind a row of paperback romance novels. Hidden there was a manila folder, thick, deliberate. "Lucas," I said, placing it on the table. "There's something you should know." He opened it, slowly, carefully, and then his face changed. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds, account summaries, numbers, big ones. He flipped through page after page, blinking as if they might rearrange into something more believable. "This can't be real," he whispered. "It is. But you live like—" "I live how I choose. Everything you've seen, this apartment, the cardigans, the hand-me-down vibe, it's all been intentional." "Why?" I leaned in. "Because I needed to know who loved me when they thought I had nothing." The silence was different this time, heavier. He put the folder down like it might catch fire.
You've been testing us.
Observing, I corrected. You let Brittany think you were struggling. I raised an eyebrow. Did she ever ask? He didn't answer. Did she ever offer help without judgment? Did she ever speak to me like a human being instead of a fundraising cause? He exhaled, defeated. I didn't realize she was treating you like that. You didn't want to realize it. That's different. Lucas nodded slowly. So, what happens now? I reached out and placed a hand over his. Now we find out who you really are. He looked at me, and for a flicker of a second, I saw my boy again. The one who used to bring me dandelions in sweaty fists and call them flowers. The one who once wrote me a card that said, "You are the bestest mommy in the galaxy." That little boy had grown up, gotten a tie, and married a woman who wouldn't have known love if it came wrapped in a Louis Vuitton box.
What about Brittany? He asked quietly.
I gave a small smile. Brittany is about to learn that the woman she's been underestimating for 3 years owns her house, her future, and the entire chessboard she's been playing on.
Lucas blinked. Wait, what?
I walked to the cabinet and pulled out another envelope, this one thinner, more potent. The house you live in, I said calmly, I bought it. Put it under a trust so it wouldn't look like mine. Paid off the mortgage last spring.
He opened the deed, read the name. My name. Plain as daylight.
He looked up pale. So when you said, she's a guest, not an owner, and guests can be asked to leave.
But Mom,
I'm not kicking her out yet.
A pause.
But I need her to know the ground she's walking on isn't hers. It never was. Lucas leaned forward. What if she fights back? I chuckled. Oh, sweetheart, I'm counting on it. And just like that, the power shifted. The woman they thought was fragile had teeth. And I was done pretending not to bite. Tuesday morning, I wore black. Not for mourning, no, those days were over. This black was clean, structured, deliberate. It said power without shouting. It whispered, you messed with the wrong woman. I hadn't dressed like this since Richard's funeral. Maybe even before that. But it felt right. Like sliding into my real skin again after years of wearing someone else's. I didn't need to say anything. I just needed to show up. The door to the house I'd purchased for them 7 years ago opened before I could knock twice. Lucas stood there, eyes wide.
Wow, he breathed. You look like you.
I am. Brittany appeared behind him, arms crossed, jaw locked. Well, she said, scanning me head to toe. Did someone hit the thrift store jackpot? Among other things, I replied, stepping inside the house I owned. The living room still had the couch I'd picked with them years ago. The one she now claimed made her feel emotionally stale. Cute. We sat an awkward triangle of tension. Brittany perched on the edge of her seat like a prosecutor gearing up to grill a hostile witness. Okay, she said, flipping invisible cue cards. Let's hear it. The truth. All of it.
What would you like to know?
She scoffed. Oh, don't play coy. The money, the act, the whole poor widow routine. What kind of person lies like that for years? I folded my hands in my lap, the picture of serenity. The kind of person who wants to know who her real family is. Her laugh was sharp and mean. I'm your daughter-in-law, not your friend. You don't get to test me like I'm some lab rat. Then perhaps you'd like to explain why you told your neighbor, Mrs. Dorsey, that I was developing early onset dementia. That shut her up. Lucas turned to her slowly. You said what? I was concerned. Brittany stammered. She was acting strange, saying weird things, dressing like someone who didn't care what you thought of her, I offered. She ignored me. I thought maybe she was losing touch. Or I said you were building a case for guardianship, so you could get access to what you assumed were large life insurance payouts. Lucas looked like someone had just pulled the floor out from under him.
No, Brittany whispered.
Oh yes, I said, reaching into my bag and pulling out a folder. Here's a transcript from your consultation with an elder law attorney 3 months ago. You inquired about declaring me legally incompetent, asked whether guardianship would give you access to financial accounts and assets. Also, if there was a way to expedite the process if I were resistant. Lucas stood so fast the coffee table rattled. You tried to take control of her money. It wasn't like that, Brittany said quickly, her voice trembling. Then explain the part where you asked if assets could be liquidated for the patient's own good, I said, flipping to the relevant page. She was pale now, colorless, like all the blood had drained straight into her designer heels. You forged this, she hissed. Try again, I said calmly. The attorney was kind enough to cooperate after my lawyer contacted him. It's all documented. Calls, emails, notes. Lucas looked at her like he was seeing her for the very first time. Is this true? Her eyes flickered. That was all it took. Why, he asked, barely a whisper. Brittany dropped the act. Because I was tired of living like a peasant. Your job barely covers our bills. I thought she was hoarding money while we were drowning in credit card debt. And you thought stealing from my mother was the answer. I thought she snapped that if she wasn't going to help us, then she didn't deserve it. We've struggled. And she just sat there, letting us think she was broke. So you made up lies about her mental state, Lucas asked. I was trying to protect us, she yelled. By committing fraud, Brittany suddenly stood, eyes wild. You set me up, she spat at me. You wanted this to happen. You lured me in. I simply stopped shielding you from the consequences of your own actions, I replied, folding the papers back into the envelope. You think you've won, she hissed. You think this is over? No, I said, rising from the couch and smoothing the front of my dress. This is the part where I remind you whose house this is. I pulled out the deed and placed it on the coffee table. Brittany stared at it like it was written in Latin. This house belongs to me, I said quietly. You've lived here as a guest, a very ungrateful one. She turned to Lucas, panicked. Say something. He didn't move. Lucas, she shouted. He looked up. His voice was quiet. Start packing. What? You heard me, he said. Pack your things and leave. This isn't your house. Her face crumpled in disbelief. You can't do this to me. 30 minutes, I said, walking to the door. After that, I call the police and have you removed. She screamed something unintelligible and stormed upstairs, the sound of her heels like thunder on wood. Lucas sat back down, rubbed his face. I didn't know, he said. I didn't know any of it. I know. What happens now? I looked out the window at the yard I'd paid to landscape. The trees were bare. The wind was biting. Now, I said, we rebuild. Without her. Outside, I heard a drawer slam shut. Upstairs, the storm was packing. But downstairs, for the first time in a very long time, it was quiet and peaceful. By Wednesday, the phone calls had begun. Not from Lucas. He was radio silent, probably still trying to process the fact that his wife had been planning to legally hijack his mother's life. No, these calls came from people I hadn't heard from in months. Years even. The first was Joanne, my late husband, Richard's sister-in-law, family matriarch, and unofficial president of the Judgment Committee. Marilyn, she said, no greeting, no pleasantries. What in God's name is going on? I sipped my tea steady. Hello to you too, Joanne. Thalia called me sobbing, she went on. Said you kicked her out of her home, humiliated her in front of Lucas, and accused her of all kinds of things. Mental illness, theft, elder abuse. That's quite a list. She said you've been lying about being poor, that you've been manipulating them for years. Ah, there it was. The great spin cycle. Brittany, or Thalia, as Joanne knew her, was washing the truth, wringing it dry, and hanging it on every clothesline she could find. Did she tell you why I asked? She said you've been acting erratically. That ever since Richard died, you've been different. I took a slow sip. Grief tends to do that. She says you need help, that the family needs to intervene. I paused, let that sink in. Joanne, I said gently, do you remember who paid for your husband's heart surgery? She was quiet. That hospital bill wasn't small. Richard and I took care of it, quietly, so you wouldn't feel ashamed. Marilyn, I didn't mean... You're calling me unstable because of a woman who served me on a chipped plate and tried to seize control of my life behind my back. Maybe ask why she never mentioned her $43,000 in hidden credit card debt. Silence. She didn't tell you about that, did she? No. Well, I said softly, there's your real concern. Joanne didn't call again. but she did forward me an email apology 2 weeks later, complete with a slightly defensive, I didn't have the full story. She wasn't the last. Elaine Richards' sister called next. Then Brandon, my nephew, the one whose tuition I paid so he wouldn't graduate with crushing debt and dreams the size of a postage stamp.
Aunt Marilyn Brandon said, his tone stiff. I've spoken with some family members and, well, there are concerns. Thalia says you might be experiencing early onset dementia.
She's very fond of that phrase, I replied. She said you were paranoid accusatory, that you kicked her out for no reason. I let out a breath.
Brandon, do you remember who paid for your sister's wedding? He hesitated. My parents
contributed. I paid for the rest. Just like I paid the down payment on your first home. Just like I covered your mother's cancer treatment when insurance failed.
A long pause.
I remember he said quietly, so now I ask you, do I sound like a woman incapable of understanding what's happening around her? No, ma'am. Good, I said, because I remember every dollar, and I remember every silence from people who now think I've lost touch.
Funny how memory works, isn't it? The next 2 days were a carousel of damage control. Phone calls, messages, relatives trying to check in while also confirming rumors. Even one voicemail that ended with a whispered, "We love you, but maybe it's time to accept help."
I laughed out loud at that one. It's strange how quickly people will abandon the version of you they always believed in simply because someone cries louder than you do. By Friday, Lucas called. "Mom," he said, exhausted, "we need to talk."
Of course.
Not at the house, he added quickly. She's been stirring the pot. We met at a small cafe downtown. Neutral territory. Quiet. The kind of place where divorcees and college students sit 5 feet apart, both trying not to cry into their coffee. Lucas looked terrible. His eyes were rimmed red, his shirt wrinkled, hair a mess. His usual curated, polished look had vanished. This version of him looked human again, vulnerable. "She's destroying me," he said, no preamble. "At work. With the family. She called my boss." My eyebrows raised. "Said you were deteriorating. That I'd been distracted at work. Suggested I take a leave of absence for mental strain due to a sick parent." "She's weaponizing sympathy," I said. "She's weaponizing everything he snapped. She's posted online. All this vague martyr content. Sometimes the people you trust most hurt you the deepest. Stuff like that." I figured she might. "She's not trying to win," he said. "She's trying to burn it all down." He scrolled through his phone, showed me a few of her posts. Carefully curated misery. Dozens of comments from her friends and yoga pals. "Stay strong. Praying for you. You deserve better." "She's good," I admitted. "She's evil." "No," I said. "She's desperate. And desperate people always make mistakes."
He frowned. "What kind of mistakes?"
I leaned in, tapped the phone screen gently. "Notice anything missing?"
He scrolled. "She doesn't mention my name."
"She doesn't mention love," I corrected. "No, I miss my husband. No, my heart is broken. It's all about being betrayed. About being embarrassed, controlled."
He froze. "She's not grieving a marriage," I said. "She's grieving a loss of access." Lucas swallowed hard. "How did I not see it? Because she didn't want you to. And because you were afraid to look." He nodded slowly. "I have something for you," I said, pulling a thick envelope from my bag. "What's this?" "Everything," I replied. Her financial records, the consultation about guardianship, surveillance screenshots, transaction history, pawn slips. She replaced your anniversary necklace with a fake, by the way. His face fell. "She sold the real one for cash." He looked like he might throw up. "You've been collecting all of this. I've been documenting her for 3 years. Why didn't you show me sooner?" "Because I needed you to be ready to believe it." Lucas stared at the envelope in his hands like it weighed more than he did.
"What do we do now?" he asked. I smiled.
"We wait," I said. "For what?" "For her to make one final move, one final blow." He blinked, and then I sipped my coffee, and then I whispered, "We end this." It didn't take long. By the following Tuesday, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize, an area code from downtown Sacramento. I almost didn't answer, but something in my bones told me this was it.
Mrs. Carter. The voice was clipped professional. Female.
Yes. This is Detective Sarah Martinez with the Sacramento Police Department. I need to ask you a few questions regarding a report that was recently filed. I placed my coffee mug down slowly. What kind of report? She paused. It involves allegations of elder abuse, financial exploitation, emotional coercion.
Of course.
Filed by a woman named Brittany Shaw. I let out a breath. Not a gasp, not a sigh, just a quiet exhale. A release of the final bit of doubt that maybe, just maybe, she had a line she wouldn't cross. She claims you are being financially manipulated by your son, Lucas Carter, the detective continued, and that she has tried to intervene on your behalf only to face retaliation.
I see.
She's also claimed that you are being coerced into signing over assets and that you're living in substandard conditions due to this alleged abuse.
Substandard, I smiled.
Detective Martinez, I said calmly, would you prefer I come in person?
There was a pause. Yes, that would be best.
Give me 1 hour. I called Jonathan Reeves, my attorney of 22 years, who had the patience of a monk and the heart of a shark. He was already halfway through his second espresso by the time I walked into his office with my envelope collection. Talia, he asked, scanning the documents.
Her real name is Brittany, but yes.
Jonathan read over the false report copy which the police had already provided to him as part of the preliminary inquiry. He let out a soft whistle. She went for the full drama package, he said. Allegations of coercion, mental decline, physical manipulation. She even called the furniture evidence of abuse, I added. Said my apartment was proof I was being financially starved. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. She took photos. I nodded. Through the window, apparently. She framed stalking as concerned welfare checks. He shook his head. Classic desperation move. You ready? I zipped my leather folder shut. Let's go. At the station, Detective Martinez was already waiting in a sterile interview room that smelled like stale coffee and low-level regret. To her credit, she wasn't hostile. In fact, she looked a little confused. Mrs. Carter, she said, gesturing for us to sit. Thank you for coming. I slid the first folder across the table. Here's my real bank portfolio. Statements from all 5 accounts. Tax returns, deeds, appraisals, legal records, a personal letter from my wealth manager if you need to verify. She blinked, then opened the folder and blinked again.
These documents indicate, she trailed off,
that I'm worth approximately $5 million.
Another pause.
But Ms. Shaw's photos are of a secondary apartment I furnished specifically to appear modest. Everything you see in those images was chosen deliberately. Detective Martinez leaned back. Why? To protect myself, I said simply. From her. Jonathan passed her another folder. This contains evidence that Ms. Shaw consulted an elder law attorney several months ago. She inquired about guardianship over Mrs. Carter. Her motive was financial access. She also has over $43,000 in hidden credit card debt, I added, and has pawned numerous pieces of family jewelry while lying to her husband about their whereabouts. Detective Martinez took the papers wordlessly. She's not concerned for my well-being, I said. She's furious that she's been cut off. This is extensive, the detective finally said. May I ask why you didn't come forward earlier? Because I hoped my son would see the truth without needing me to expose it. But hope, I said a little dryly, has a funny expiration date. Detective Martinez smiled faintly at that. And this recent complaint from Miss Shaw is her last card, Jonathan said, and it's a false police report. The detective gave a single solemn nod. We'll verify everything. If it checks out, and frankly it looks solid, she'll be facing charges. Good, I said softly, because I'm done playing defense. 2 hours later, I was back in my real home, a modern penthouse at Meridian Towers, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a curated art collection, and a leather sofa you could sleep on for 2 days without developing back pain. I poured a glass of wine and turned on my jazz playlist. Nina Simone, of course. There's something about her voice that feels like truth served warm. My phone rang again. Lucas.
Mom, his voice was breathless. She's been arrested.
I know.
You knew?
She filed a false report, I said calmly. Did you think I wouldn't be ready? He paused. Where are you? At home. I went by your apartment. It's empty. I smiled. Come to 5th Street.
Meridian Towers. Penthouse level.
Silence. Then you've been living there this whole time?
Yes.
Even across the phone, I could feel him recalibrating everything. Okay, he said. I'm on my way. When Lucas arrived 40 minutes later, he looked like a man stepping into a different reality. He stood at the doorway, eyes darting across the polished floors, the marble countertops, the grand piano he didn't know I played.
This is me, I said. The real me.
He sat on the edge of the sofa like he wasn't sure it wouldn't disappear beneath him. She really tried to ruin you. She tried to ruin both of us, I corrected. What happens to her now? She'll be charged for filing a false report, possibly stalking, and certainly attempted fraud. Lucas buried his head in his hands. I don't know what's real anymore. I sat beside him, placing a gentle hand on his back. This, I said, is real.
The rest was performance. Yours, mine, hers, but this moment, this is ours.
He nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Mom. I know. We sat in silence for a long while.
Not awkward, not broken, just quiet.
Outside, the city buzzed. Somewhere across town, Brittany, or Talia, or whatever mask she wore today, was sitting in a cell spinning her next version of events. But here in this room, there were no more lies. Only truth. Only beginning again. The next morning, I woke to a sunrise sharp enough to slice through memory. It painted my windows gold and warmed the penthouse walls like grace after war. For the first time in years, I felt a strange, unfamiliar thing blooming beneath my ribs. It took me a moment to name it. Peace. Until the phone rang. It was a number I knew far too well. Brittany's sister. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. Then picked up. Marilyn. The woman began without even pretending to check her tone. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is cruel. Brittany is devastated. I let out a quiet breath. Is she? She says you ambushed her. That you kicked her out with no warning. That you're retaliating because she suggested you needed help. I stared out over the city skyline. Did she also mention the $43,000 she's hidden in debt? I asked. Or her attempt to get legal control over my finances. The pause on the other end was instructional. She said you were confused, that you imagined all of it. Well, I replied dryly, my lawyer, her attorney, the detective, and a rather large stack of notarized documents seemed to share in my hallucination. You always did have a flair for the dramatic, the sister snapped, then hung up. Click! They were circling the wagons. Not because they believed her, but because it was easier than confronting the alternative that someone they knew, someone who always wore control like a designer scarf, had been exposed. And by someone they thought too old, too passive, too worn to fight back. Later that day, Lucas came by again. This time without warning. No cautious call, no hesitation. He brought flowers, wildflowers, just like when he was little. He placed them on my kitchen island and stared at them like he didn't know what to do with his hands. I saw her social media posts, he said, again. She's not done, I replied. She's regrouping. She's claiming you manipulated me, that you poisoned our marriage. She's weaponizing guilt, I said, because rage didn't work. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I look back at the last 3 years and wonder who I even was. Someone trying to survive, I said gently. We all become strangers to ourselves when we're walking on eggshells. She said I was weak, that I didn't stand up for her. She means you didn't take her side when she lied.
He nodded.
I don't know what to believe anymore. Then believe behavior, I told him. Not words. Words lie. Behavior forgets to. He looked at me like I'd handed him a compass. And maybe I had. That night, Lucas showed me more screenshots. Brittany was back online. Cryptic captions, moody selfies, quotes about emotional abuse, and vague mentions of being erased from her own life. The comment sections were filled with support. Stay strong, queen. You deserve better. Some people don't know how to love fully. It would have been funny if it weren't so exhausting. And then, a twist. She's gone to another lawyer, Lucas said. Let me guess, tenant rights.
He nodded.
She's claiming she was wrongfully evicted, that she had a verbal rental agreement, that you forced her out under duress. She really doesn't know when to quit, I muttered.
The lawyer said she has no case. The deed's in your name. No lease, no payments, no utilities in her name. Nothing,
But she's not trying to win. She's trying to exhaust you.
of course.
Lucas looked at me, worry lining his eyes. What do we do?
We let her keep posting, I said. Keep lying, because sooner or later she'll overplay her hand.
You really think she's that reckless? No, I said I think she's that arrogant. A few days passed, then a week. Brittany's online campaign grew more dramatic. Videos with sad piano music. Photos of her holding a mug in a sunbeam looking just devastated enough to seem noble. Still no mention of Lucas. No mention of love lost. Only access denied. One night, Lucas scrolled through her posts with a frown. She never says she misses me, he muttered. Never once. She doesn't, I said simply. She misses control. He didn't speak for a while, just sat there scrolling. And then he said something that stopped me cold. I think I loved an idea, not a person. I looked up from my book. Say more. I think I married who I wanted her to be, he said, not who she was. That's not weakness, I said. That's hope. But it turned into denial. Hope often does. Lucas let out a quiet laugh. You sound like Dad. I smiled. Richard would have confronted her on day 2. He would have dragged her out by her eyebrows. I laughed. Yes, well, I took a slower approach.
3 years.
I needed you to see it for yourself.
He nodded. I did.
Later that evening, as he was about to leave, Lucas hesitated by the door. There's someone I want you to meet soon, he said, almost bashfully. My eyebrows rose. Really?
She's normal. A teacher. Quiet. Kind. Volunteers at a shelter. Drives a Honda from 2012 and thinks Olive Garden is a fancy night out.
That sounds delightfully low maintenance.
He laughed. We've been talking for a couple months. She doesn't know anything about the money, or the house, or this.
Good, I said. Start with the truth. See where it takes you. I'm scared, he admitted.
Of what?
Of not knowing the difference between real and fake again. I nodded. That's fair. Will you meet her?
When you're ready.
And if you don't like her, I smiled. Then I'll keep it to myself, unless you ask.
He paused.
Thanks, Mom. Lucas, I said gently, you're doing just fine.
He smiled back. And this time, it reached his eyes.
As he left, I stood at the window, watching his taillights disappear into the quiet city night. My son was free, and I finally was myself again. Exactly 1 week later, Brittany made her final move. It arrived not with a knock on the door or a text message dripping in emojis, but with a phone call from the police. Again. Only this time it wasn't an inquiry. It was an accusation. Mrs. Carter, Detective Martinez said, her tone sharp but composed. We've received a new complaint filed through the district attorney's office. Miss Brittany Shaw is now alleging that you and your son have conspired to commit financial abuse against her as a dependent spouse. She's claiming psychological manipulation, coercion, and retaliation. I let out the kind of laugh that starts in your stomach and dies in your throat. She's calling herself a dependent spouse now, I asked. Yes, Martinez replied, exhaling. She submitted statements, screenshots, bank records, although many appear unrelated or misleading. Still, we're obligated to investigate. Of course, I said. What would you like from me? Come in, bring everything. Oh, don't worry, I said. I have more than everything. 30 minutes later, I walked into the station in a navy pantsuit and flats sharp enough to cut tile. Jonathan met me at the front desk, files in hand, eyes calm behind his glasses.
Showtime, he murmured.
We were escorted back to the interview room. Detective Martinez was already reviewing a printed copy of Brittany's evidence eyebrows knit together in what I recognized as deep, unrelenting skepticism. She's really trying to go nuclear, huh? I said, pulling out my file and setting it next to hers. She's doubled down, the detective said, claiming she was emotionally abused, gaslit, financially trapped. She lived in a house she didn't pay for, spent money she didn't earn, and wore designer labels while calling me a burden. Jonathan opened the folder. These are recordings, emails, financial documents, evidence of her consultations with multiple attorneys, most of whom turned her away once they reviewed the facts. Martinez took her time. She flipped through each item, slowly nodding as the narrative unfolded. She even forged a few bank statements I added, pointing to Brittany's submission. Martinez's head snapped up. "You're sure?" Jonathan pulled out the originals. "Compare them." She altered the balances. Badly too, one account shows a withdrawal that doesn't exist. "This crosses into felony territory," the detective muttered. "Fraud. Filing a false report. Possibly obstruction." "Oh, I said it gets worse." Jonathan slid across another folder. "These are screenshots from her burner account," he said. She created a second profile to comment on her own posts. "Amplify sympathy. Troll family members who questioned her story. We had it traced." Martinez looked up slowly. "She's impersonating other people online." "Multiple," Jonathan said, "including someone claiming to be an old college roommate who doesn't exist." The detective leaned back, folding her hands. "You've been documenting this the whole time." "For 3 years," I said. "I didn't go quiet because I was weak. I went quiet to listen." She tapped her pen against her notepad, silent for a long while. Then finally, "We'll move forward with charges. Perjury, falsification of documents, identity misrepresentation, stalking," and I asked, eyebrows raised. Martinez smiled faintly, "and filing a false police report again." By the time Lucas called me later that evening, the news had already spread like wildfire. "She's been arrested again," he said breathlessly, "charged with, like, everything." "Nearly." She called my office on the way to the station, left a message saying I'd regret this, that I'd never be free of her. "You are," I said simply. "She just hasn't realized it yet." Lucas was quiet for a while. "Then what happens next?" "You start over. And you..." I looked around my penthouse, lit by the soft warmth of low evening sun jazz playing gently from the corner speakers. I felt lighter. Not because Brittany was gone, but because I had finally stopped playing a character in someone else's drama. I start over too. The next morning I listed the house. The one Brittany had claimed as hers. The one I'd purchased and maintained and let them live in for 7 years without rent. It sold in 3 days, cash offer, no inspection. I didn't need the money, but Lucas did. I handed him the check. "Mom," he whispered, eyes wide. This is too much." "It's yours. It always was. You just didn't know it yet." He looked like he might cry. "You're giving me the house. I'm giving you a chance to rewrite everything." He hugged me. Tight, real. The kind of hug that said, "I see you now." And then came the best surprise. "Would you like to meet her?" he asked. "The teacher." He nodded. "Emily. She doesn't know anything yet. About Brittany, about you, about all this." "Then let's keep it that way for now." We met a few days later at a park. Emily was soft-spoken, wore jeans and sneakers, and had that pleasant sort of warmth that didn't need attention to exist. She brought homemade muffins and called me Mrs. Carter 3 times before I gently asked her to stop. She laughed and blushed and looked at Lucas like she already loved him. Later, after she walked to the car to grab something, Lucas turned to me. "Well, she's real," I said, "and that's rare. She makes me feel like I can breathe again." "Then don't waste it." "I'm afraid." "Good," I said. "That means it matters." That night, I poured a single glass of wine, opened the sliding doors to the terrace, and watched the city lights flicker on one by one. No police reports, no lies, no matching plates or chipped cups. Just space and light and the quiet after a long, long storm. Some storms don't leave debris behind, they leave clarity and silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels earned. By the end of the week, I was sitting at the kitchen table in my real home, the one with white marble counters and gold hardware I never bragged about. Sunlight poured through the windows, my phone sat face down. No buzzing, no interruptions. Lucas had finally begun smiling again. He and Emily were slowly building something new, quiet, sincere, without needing validation from matching Instagram captions or histrionic brunch photos. She reminded me of the kind of women the world overlooks because they don't scream for attention. And yet she glowed. They cooked together, took long walks, watched movies that didn't require emotional manipulation to be compelling. Most importantly, he didn't flinch anymore when he talked about love. And Brittany, she was still trying to claw her way out of the mess she'd created. Her bail had been denied twice. Her lawyer dropped her case once the evidence came inciting irreconcilable conflicts in client narrative. Translation, she'd lied to him too. She tried to reach out one last time through a handwritten letter. It arrived in a plain white envelope addressed to Mrs. M. Carter as if formality would mask her intentions. The letter was a masterpiece of denial. She blamed stress, hormones, bad influences. Accused me of testing her loyalty in a way that no one could possibly pass. Claimed Lucas had changed, that I had corrupted him.
She didn't apologize, not once. She just justified.
I didn't respond. Instead, I slid the letter into a drawer next to an old black and white photo of Richard, who would have read the entire thing with one eyebrow raised and then set it on fire using a kitchen lighter and his favorite glass of scotch. That was one of his great lessons: never negotiate with delusion. The next surprise came in the form of text messages. Not from Brittany, of course. Her phone privileges were limited now, but from people who had once joined her bandwagon. Joanne, Elaine, even Brandon. All of them had the same tone: regret, masquerading as surprise. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how bad things were. I should have asked your side of the story. I jumped to conclusions. Can we talk? I responded to each one. Cordially, firmly, without bitterness. But I didn't offer invitations. Some bridges are better admired from a distance, especially the ones you had to rebuild without their help. A few days later, I had lunch with Lucas. We sat in a booth at a small diner, a little place with cracked vinyl cushions and a waitress who called everyone honey whether they were 8 or 80. Lucas stirred his coffee eyes, thoughtful. She sent me a letter too, he said quietly. Let me guess, I replied. She's the real victim. Her intentions were misunderstood, and she loves you, but you betrayed her.
He blinked, word for word.
I nodded. They always recycle material. Same script, new audience. He hesitated. Do you think she ever loved me? I looked at him for a long moment. I think she loved what you gave her access to. Comfort, reputation, a curated life. But love, no. He looked down. It hurts, knowing I was used. It should, I said. Because you're not the kind of man who deserved that. The waitress dropped off our food, 2 BLTs, and a basket of fries. Lucas didn't eat right away. He just kept looking out the window like he was trying to catch a different version of his life in the reflection. She never once asked me what I wanted, he murmured. It was always about the next upgrade, the next impression to make. I don't even think she liked the house. She liked what it said about her. I dipped a fry into ketchup. And what did it say about you?
That I was successful, settled, a provider.
And how did you feel?
He paused, then trapped. I reached across the table and touched his hand.
You're free now, I said. And not just from her, from the version of you she tried to make real.
He nodded slowly.
That night I returned to my penthouse with a strange sense of calm. Like everything that needed to collapse had finally done so, and all that remained was rebuilding with intention this time. I spent the evening organizing papers, shredding the old, scanning the necessary, and tucking the rest into labeled folders. Legal, family, legacy. I even started something I hadn't done in years, writing.
Not a novel, not a memoir, just notes.
To my future self. To Emily, perhaps. To Lucas. To whoever might someday ask how I stayed quiet for so long without being crushed by it. It turns out silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes silence is how you sharpen your sword. As I scribbled, my phone buzzed once. Lucas again. Dinner at our place next week. Emily's making her mom's chili. Thought we'd eat out on the patio if the weather's nice. I stared at the message for a long moment. Not because I wasn't going, but because he'd said our place. A shared space. Built with someone real, someone gentle, Someone who didn't need a costume to feel worthy of a seat at the table. I typed back, wouldn't miss it. Save me a seat with a matching plate this time. He replied instantly with a laughing emoji and a red heart. I laughed too. For real. Not the polite, exhausted laugh I'd given for years, but something deep and round and whole. I poured a glass of wine and walked out to the terrace. The air was cooler than expected. Crisp. The kind that whispers change is here, not coming. Somewhere in the city, a woman who mistook kindness for weakness was sitting in a holding cell, rewriting her own history. Somewhere else, a man who'd once lost himself was making dinner plans with someone who saw him clearly. And here I was, still standing, still smiling, still me. The day I officially closed the sale of the house, the one Brittany had once called her forever home, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. There's a difference. Victory often carries the weight of bloodshed. But this wasn't about winning. It was about releasing something that was never truly mine to carry in the first place. I handed the keys to the realtor with a smile and walked away without looking back. I didn't need one final glance to confirm what I already knew: that house had become a mausoleum of who Lucas used to be, not a home. Let the new owners fill it with laughter, real laughter. Later that week, Emily invited me to lunch, just the two of us. She chose a tiny cafe in Midtown with mismatched chairs and succulents in teacups. A place with no pretense. The kind of place Brittany would have sneered at and then posted about for aesthetics. Emily wore jeans, a soft blue sweater, and absolutely no makeup. She ordered a turkey sandwich and an herbal tea. No drama, no spectacle. Just a woman who knew who she was and didn't apologize for it. I wanted to talk, she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Just us. Of course I smiled. I know about Brittany, about everything. My eyebrows lifted slightly. Lucas didn't tell me. Not directly, but he didn't have to. I've seen the way he tenses when his phone buzzes. The way he flinches when someone raises their voice at a restaurant. I've known for a while that something heavy lives behind his eyes. I sipped my coffee, watching her carefully. I'm not here to judge, she continued. I'm not afraid of the past. I just wanted to tell you that I'm not her. I know you're not, I said. And I don't want you to feel like you need to test me. That stopped me. She smiled, not unkindly. I've seen the way you watch me. It's okay. I'd probably do the same. But I want you to know that I love who he is now. Not who I think he could be. I exhaled, surprised by the sting in my eyes. You don't have to win me over, Emily. She nodded. Good. Because I'm not performing. I just want to be part of the family, if you'll have me. I reached across the table and touched her hand. Then welcome, I said, truly. She laughed, nervous, relieved, real. I was terrified you'd hate me. Oh, I absolutely hate how well you pull off that sweater, I teased. But other than that, you're doing fine. When I got home later that day, I found a small package waiting for me by the door. No name, no return address. Just a plain brown box with clean edges. Inside was a pair of earrings, real pearl studs in a velvet box, and a note. You wore these the day Richard proposed. I borrowed them once and never gave them back. I'm sorry. That was it. No signature, no last name, no justification, no threats. Just an object returned to its rightful owner. I held the earrings for a moment, turning them in the light. They were still lovely, still elegant, still mine. And just like that, the last thread connecting us frayed into nothing. The following Sunday, we had dinner together, Lucas, Emily, and me, on their back patio. String lights flickered above. Soft jazz played from a Bluetooth speaker that kept cutting out. A citronella candle sputtered bravely against one determined mosquito. Emily made chili served with cornbread and laughter. Lucas set the table. Real napkins, matching plates. When he handed me a bowl, he grinned. No bent forks tonight. No mismatched glasses either, I quipped. He winked. We ate. We talked. We teased. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider at my own son's table.
I felt like a mother again.
At one point, Emily excused herself to grab dessert homemade peach cobbler, because of course, and I turned to Lucas. "You're different," I said.
He looked at me. Better, freer. He nodded. I think I started becoming myself the day she left.
"She didn't leave," I said softly.
You let her go.
He sat with that for a moment. "You saved me," he said. "No," I replied, "you saved yourself. I just handed you the flashlight."
We watched the sky deepen into indigo, then velvet. Crickets began their nightly concert. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked twice, then went silent. All the sounds of a quiet life returning.
Lucas cleared his throat. "I think I'm going to propose." I blinked. "To Emily, no to the dog that barked," he deadpanned.
I laughed. "Don't mess with me." He grinned. "Yes, to Emily." I smiled. "Then do it well. Do it honestly."
"She doesn't know about the money, or the penthouse, or what you gave me from the house sale."
"Good," I said. "Let her love you for free.
And if she says yes,
then I'll dance at your wedding in the same earrings I wore when your father proposed." Lucas looked down at the table, then back at me.
"I love you, Mom." I felt my throat tighten. "I know, sweetheart, and I love you more than you can imagine." Emily returned with dessert and a smile, and the three of us sat under the lights, eating cobbler, laughing at nothing, and letting the world be simple for just one night. No lies, no games, no shadows.
Just light, and family, and peace. 6 months later, I stood barefoot on my terrace as the sun slipped behind the skyline. The city was glowing windows, flickering like constellation streetlights, humming softly to life. The air was warm but sleepy, like summer winding itself into a blanket of dusk. I was holding a letter. One final letter, not from Brittany, from the district attorney. Formal, terse, satisfying. It confirmed what we already knew. Her plea deal was accepted. 6 months in county jail, 3 years probation. A permanent restraining order. Restitution for the legal costs incurred by her false accusations. And a warning, one more infraction, one more manipulation, and she'd face felony charges. She had tried right up until the end to make herself the victim. Tried to claim emotional distress, trauma, betrayal. But paperwork doesn't cry, and evidence doesn't lie. Lucas came over that evening with a bottle of red wine and a small envelope. "Don't open it yet," he said, pressing it into my hand. "Wait until I leave." "You're being mysterious," I said, taking it anyway.
"I'm being romantic."
"Oh no," I teased. "You've caught the Emily virus."
He laughed. "I'm fully infected."
We drank wine on the terrace. Talked about their upcoming road trip. Emily had always wanted to see the giant redwoods. Lucas had always wanted to take a vacation that didn't require an itinerary or 3 backup chargers. They were planning to stay in a tiny cabin. No cell service. Just books each other and a creek outside the window.
I told him I was jealous.
He told me I was invited next time only if I promised not to bring investment reports. Eventually he stood up to go. "You're sure you want me to open this alone?" I asked, holding up the envelope. He nodded. "Yeah, it's better that way." He hugged me. And for a moment I saw it all flash behind his eyes, the 3 years of quiet abandonment, the broken dinners, the misread loyalties. And then I saw them fade, replaced with something sturdier. He left. I waited a while, then opened it. Inside was a photo. Lucas, maybe 4 years old, sitting on my lap in the backyard, both of us covered in popsicle juice. I was laughing. He was looking up at me with adoration that only children can manage without effort.
On the back, in his handwriting, "Thank you for protecting me when I couldn't see what I needed saving from." I cried. I won't pretend I didn't.
Not the kind of crying that wrecks you. The kind that drains something old. That rinses the corners of your spirit. That says you made it through.
Later that night, I sat at my desk and wrote something I'd been avoiding. Not a journal entry, not a financial note. A letter to Richard.
My love, you wouldn't believe how much I've changed. You always said I was the quiet storm. Turns out storms don't always need thunder. Sometimes they just need patience and timing.
and enough love for someone to finally wake up. I miss you, but I think I'm ready to stop grieving. Not because I'm over you, never that, but because I finally come back to myself. I held the line, Richard, and it worked. Our son is safe. Our legacy is intact, and I'm no longer invisible. All my love, Marilyn. I folded it, sealed it, and tucked it inside the drawer where I kept old things, precious things. Not because they were gone, but because they were part of what built me. The next morning, I made my coffee in a real mug, white ceramic, smooth, no chips. I put on a soft blouse and walked barefoot to the balcony. The sky was a watercolor of coral and lavender, and I was free, not just from Brittany, from pretending, from costumes, from silence. It had taken 3 years, a million small lies, and one massive act of love disguised as deception. But here I stood, no longer Eileen Holloway, the grieving dependent widow. No longer a woman underestimated at every turn. I was Marilyn Carter again, fully, fiercely, finally. And for once, the world saw me exactly as I was. And I was just fine with that. Let me slow it down now. Let the words soften. Let the breath deepen. The house is quiet. The night is gentle. And the story, our story, has come to its resting place. You've walked with me through deception and confrontation, through whispered warnings and quiet victories. You've heard the thunder held in silence, the power in a mother's gaze, the truth stitched between chipped plates and cold lasagna. And now we let it go. Let the image fade. The son reclaiming his name, the woman reclaiming her worth, the liar facing the cost of her theater. Breathe in, exhale. You are not what they called you. You are not what they assumed. You are who you decide to become, even if it takes years to step fully into that light. Even if you had to lose your voice for a while, just to learn how powerful it really is when you use it. So sleep easy tonight, dear one. The storm has passed, and in its place, stillness, not silence, no, but peace. Whispered, steady, earned. Good night.